Hello, David Owen. You're a trustee of the William Heath Robinson Trust and have been long involved with the museum, I think.
I have.
How long?
Must be over 2 years now since I first saw one of the signs coming up here in Pinner and decided to get involved.
What made you get involved?
Well, I've been working at the British Museum as a museum professional, and I really understand that museums are great places to bring communities together. And then I saw the posters going up around Pinner saying that a new museum was being built here, and just thought I needed to be involved.
So you're head of visitor experience at the British Museum, is that right?
I'm a visitor services manager, so fairly similar, yeah.
So would you say that the Heath Robinson Museum here in Pinner can learn from the British Museum?
Well, they're very different organisations and very different sizes, but museums in general, I feel, they're not just places of learning, they're places of entertainment.
What can the Heath Robinson Museum in Pinner learn from the British Museum, David?
Well, they're very different organisations and very different sizes, but I think there's some things that are very similar with all museums and art galleries. I feel that they're places of learning, but not just learning, but to really inspire and entertain people. And that kind of feeling of inspiration and entertainment, I feel we can bring to the Heath Robinson Museum, already have done.
And what exactly is your role as a trustee of the Heath Robinson Trust?
Well, the William Heath Robinson Trust is entrusted with looking after the collection. And as such, I've been helping them out with different policies and procedures, just using some of my knowledge from the British Museum.
What are the sorts of policies and procedures that smaller museums can often overlook?
Well, I think most of the policies and procedures that a large museum would need, a smaller museum would need as well. Some of them might not seem as relevant to a smaller museum. For instance, we're looking at emergency plans if the worst things happen to the building. Things that are very, very unlikely to happen, but we still need to plan for.
So it needs a range of policies and in terms of governance to have legitimacy.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's a professional institution, and as such we need all the same governance documents as any other museum or any other charitable institution.
How is your family using the museum? I know you've got a young family. I don't know what ages they are, but tell us a bit about your engagement as a family with the museum.
Yeah, so I live just across the park from the museum with my family. I've got 3 daughters and they go to school just next door to the museum at the school there. So we're walking by every day. We came along to the grand opening and they love the museum, and they're very inspired by the kind of contraptions that Heath Robinson was well known for.
About aspects of Heath Robinson, you know, his fae aspect, the drawing of fairies, that sort of thing. Is there anything that particularly appeals to your girls?
Oh, absolutely. Being 3 young girls, things like fairies and weird, amazing contraptions, those are the kind of things, you know, the kind of way that Heath Robinson contraptions have like inspired things like Wallace and Gromit. Obviously, lots of children love them, and my children are no different.
How do you feel it affects the museum, it being in a park, the Pinner Memorial Park, with the lake next door and the geese and the swans and everything? What difference does that make?
Well, I think naturally there's a lot of people in the area anyway, because lots of people visit the park who maybe don't know about the museum, so then can come along and see the museum. But also people who come from outside of the area, never been to Pinner before, and decide to visit the Heath Robinson Museum. It makes for a more full day out, the fact that we've got this lovely park and the cafe next door as well. It can bring a full kind of visitor experience for a longer day out for people.
What do you think are going to be the challenges for the museum going forward?
I think the challenges are to get the visitor numbers to keep the place going. So I guess advertising far and wide to find all of the Heath Robinson fans around the country, around the world, to make sure they know that we're here. Yeah, I think that's potentially the biggest challenge. But I mean, there are challenges that are brilliant challenges that we face here. How can we make a museum really inspirational for children? Because a lot of children, when they think of museums, think of dusty old institutions, and this is anything but. So that's a great challenge for us to inspire future generations.
I know one of the challenges is that young people often haven't heard as much about Heath Robinson as the older generation.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are some solutions in terms of appealing to younger people?
Well, I think some of the outreach work that we're doing with local schools can definitely help with that. If we can advertise the museum in areas that children would read about, there's many different things we can do with social media and are doing with social media to just try and all we really need to do, I feel, is pique the interest of younger generations and their families. And if we can get them here into the museum to see the collection, to find out what Heath Robinson was about, I'm sure they'll be inspired and love what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm. William Heath Robinson lived here from, I think, 1908 for about 10 years with his family. Mm-hmm. Probably his family at a similar age to your family. Mm-hmm. Do you feel any sort of co-fraternity with him over that?
I've not thought about that before. I guess so. Yes, I know he lived in the area. He lived in Hatch End before he lived in Pinner, so he has lived around the local area. Yes, I guess and a lot of Pinner is quite old, so there'll be bits of Pinner that are here now that were certainly around then as well. So, yeah.
What has it been like for you being a volunteer and a trustee? How has that made you feel, or what's it brought to your life?
I think it's been brilliant. I myself have lived in Pinner for I think it's 8 or 9 years now, and I always felt that I wanted to give a little bit more back to Pinner because it's a great place to live, and there's great things here for myself and my family, and to be able to give something back to the community, I personally have felt been quite rewarding. But also some of the actual work that I've done for the museum has pushed me further in my own work. It's been a great learning experience, but also something I've really enjoyed.
I know you've worked with me on the evaluation committee, mm-hmm. and what lessons have we learned from that, do you think?
I think the main one is potentially something we knew before we even started, but it's to just listen to what people are saying, listen to what the visitors to the museum want to tell us, and then listen to other people who potentially aren't coming to the museum, listen to what they're telling us, see what people want about a new museum, and just make it a museum for the people, for the community.
Good. David, could you tell us a little bit more about how you became a trustee?
Yes, so I live here in Pinner, and I started seeing the posters going up around Pinner advertising that a new museum was being built, and I rang the trust up and explained that I worked at the British Museum and that could I offer, some help. So they asked me to work on a governance document, which I did for them for several months, and then after that I was very honoured that the trust rung me up and asked me if I'd join them as a trustee, and very pleased to do so.
How often do you meet as trustees?
We meet, I think we're traditionally supposed to meet 3 times a year. I think we've met slightly more often than that, just the run up to the opening of the museum.
Right, well thank you very much indeed. Very much enjoyed talking to you, thank you.